Welcome back to another Star Mini Gaming YouTube video, and this video I wanted to do that was inspired by Paul Conti's most recent video, in which he initially was responding to Vince's old topic of the week on scenarios in Warhammer and wargaming in general, and he started talking about building special terrain boards for those and having the boards more vertical as opposed to just merely horizontal, because of the freedom of movement that you have in Age of Sigmar and other skirmish level games. And as someone who came from skirmish level games to this, it's something I'm used to. I hadn't really thought about that it would be something new for the community, and so it's been kind of fun to watch the community kind of discover things that are new to Age of Sigmar beyond just the rules, in terms of how you can play the game, how you can build the terrain boards and all. And so I just wanted to first off give a shout out to Paul. If you're not subscribed to his YouTube channel, as Vince is always saying, what the heck are you doing? If I could have any one person put out more videos on YouTube, it would be Paul Conti. So I will link his channel below, because it is well worth checking out. He puts out some of the best content for Age of Sigmar that there is out there. And honestly, he's just great to listen to. But this is going to be a real brief video. I just wanted to kind of highlight a few different images that I've seen from other skirmish level games, and just for inspiration for anyone who might be looking for some in building their own gaming table. So let's go ahead and jump right on in, and without further ado, here we go. So I'm certainly not going to spend an inordinate amount of time on this. I just wanted to kind of highlight a few different images, like I said, and talk about them and how, they can provide ideas for you in Age of Sigmar. This is a picture from the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. A lot of these will be from there. You'll also see some from Infinity, because honestly, those are the two games that I'm the most familiar with, that I've seen excellent terrain boards that are built in such a way that if you played a more block rank and file type game, you might have trouble using this kind of terrain. So in this one, quite clearly you can see we have a harbor with steps and narrow bridges, and it's a pretty busy little area. It's not the greatest example, but the fact that you have the multiple levels coming from the water all the way up, that the board is very vertical. You have clearly lots of different varying heights that you can set your models on. That is what I really wanted to illustrate here with this. And then we have this one, which is a small picture from a small segment of the Mines of Moria. There was a board several boards actually that I've seen done, and this was one that was just a small segment outside of Balin's tomb. It is pretty neat. As you can see, the stairways, and you have the different raised levels and the different doorways, and clearly the pillars and all, just to kind of show, kind of a congested look, I guess, that you can make in the terrain that that can be pretty neat if you apply it to areas of your board. This is a picture of an Infinity terrain map, and again, I just wanted to draw your attention to all the different varying heights of the buildings. This is not the greatest example of it, but in Infinity it's quite common to see catwalks running between buildings of various heights, to see basically like a bridge like a walking bridge that starts on the ground on one side of a road, goes up over the road and comes back down. A lot of buildings like this one, I've seen similar designs that the roof is removable, and the doors, can be removed and opened, and there's open windows, or they can be closed, different things like that. A very modular kind of terrain that you can really interact with while you're playing the game, which is, obviously a big strength of the game, and can really be done in any kind of skirmish game, and certainly is applicable to Age of Sigmar. This one, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah, unfortunately it gets pixelated. This was a really good example of those kind of catwalks. Then you have, the multiple levels of the buildings. Then you have right here a three-story building with a catwalk that kind of comes up to that third story and connects it to other buildings. And this is just a really good example of the multi-layer approach that you can take in a skirmish level gaming board. and honestly it looks like a ton of fun to play on. This is another example of it. Again, not all these are necessarily like the greatest boards that I've ever seen, but the point is that, you know, all of these are illustrating different ways that you can use height in your game board. Your game board doesn't have to be a flat or nearly flat 6x4 space. Here, as you can see, you know, there's clearly stairs going right here. You could have got your first story, second story, third story, and then the roof up here with what looks like a swimming pool. Then you have, I guess, like a metro line or whatever. But what's really neat about this one is, even though, you know, you have the cars that look kind of goofy and all, excuse me, that you have so many different kind of like half-tiered levels, and there's so much going on here to where it could be a really cool place to have, you know, like archers stationed on one level, like shooting down at people as they're trying to approach into a doorway and all. Like, there's so many things that you can do whenever you're incorporating height into it. This is a great one. A little bit of the image is going to be cut off, but you'll get enough of it to see. Again, this is from the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game, Helm's Deep. There's not very many more iconic scenes from the movies. There's so many people that I've seen that have built terrain boards like this, and they're always great. You know, it adds narrative to your game, clearly, and just, it's really neat, especially, you know, in Lord of the Rings, like I've said before, it's a single infantry or a single model kind of game. There's no squads, everything is controlled individually. But even in a game like Age of Sigmar, like, it's easy enough to build really neat, tight, compact fortifications like this, and have the whole kind of like ladders siege going on, and obviously like a causeway like this, where, you know, you can really create your own narrative there. This was one that I had seen from the Escape from Goblin Town starter kit, where people had taken the idea from that and kind of made their own based upon the movies. And so you have the lower level and, you know, the rocks to kind of build up to it, and then you have the upper causeways. It was really neat, again, in the Lord of the Rings game, because there was a falling mechanic where you potentially took damage if you fell off these kinds of things. If your guy was basically trapped against the edge of it while in combat, he basically had the choice of, is he going to allow himself to be overexposed and take additional potential strikes, or jump and potentially take the falling damage. So it's a really neat thing. Obviously, Age of Sigmar doesn't have rules for that kind of thing in there as of right now, but that certainly doesn't mean that you couldn't include it in your own game. For example, in Lord of the Rings, it was it was the basic strength and defense system, similar to classic Warhammer or 40k. So it was for each inch that you fell past, if the fall was greater than twice your model's height, for each inch you fell, you took a strength-free hit. So, for example, in Age of Sigmar, we could say something to the effect of, if you fell from a height that's, you know, greater than double your model's height, then for, you know, every 2 inches or whatever, you roll a die on a 4-up, you take, you know, one wound that is, you know, a mortal wound, or one wound that is, depending on what you're falling into, or one wound that has no rend, you know, something like that. This is another picture of a different Helm's Deep board and being used in game, and it's just really neat to see, you know, how much like action you can really get in some of these shots and on some of the game boards whenever you're playing out, you know, these kind of skirmish level games. This one is another one of my personal favorites. I apologize, some of it is cut off in the video, but this is a picture of Minas Tirith. I watched a campaign that a gentleman ran on YouTube. I'll link his channel below as well. But he ran a Lord of the Ring based campaign, and this was his battle at Minas Tirith. So he had the walls, and he had a bit of a 3D puzzle that he had found for kind of the throne chamber or whatever for Minas Tirith, and the Tower of Icthelion that he put in there as well to kind of add some more. So it was a fairly crowded kind of courtyard, which looked good, and the walls, you know, adding the multiple tier effect and all to this. And there's a little bit more of the walls outside of the shot that he's built into larger segments on both ends. But again, it's just a pretty neat way to incorporate the height into your battlefield. And that's all the photos that I have. But again, you know, the whole point of this is just to show what you can do and hopefully provide some inspiration for your own gaming boards. Please check out the channels that I mentioned below. They are good channels that have a lot of good content that certainly can inspire you for your own games. But until next time, this is James, and